Welcome to today's stream. Goodness gracious. I announced the stream yesterday. What time? I don't even know. But not yesterday. Apparently the 9th. Yeah, I announced the stream the 9th. And I haven't slept since then. Because I have been very busy packing for my move. Which also happens to be packing for an extended trip. So a lot of things happening at once right now, so it's been a busy week. But let me look some charts before I get some sleep. All right, can I do Ethereum? Yes, I can. Okay, Ethereum's actually tanking pretty nicely. So I think on the daily chart we did have that. Oh, that's great. Okay, daily. This is very bearish. A few things we got going on here. One is an expansion, and while that is significant, it is made even more significant by being in the same direction as our mean inversion condition. So I do expect some longer-term consolidation for Ethereum. However, it is worth noting we are on the last line of support here with the CLCP. Likely, I would expect a small bounce here, probably up to 6,800, and then we'll probably see a slow trickle down. Next up, XRP. Pretty noisy chart. I'm not seeing much on this one. Let's do a Pearl. Okay, clean chart. It's just a bearish clean chart where we have our initial expansion and we immediately bounce off of the pivot to see continued trend. So bearish trend sustained. Let's check out IOST. Okay. IOST. It's pretty interesting to see an impulse immediately see trending mean reversion. Yeah, this is going to be neutral compression. I'm not seeing any place here. Let's take a look at RSR, shall we? Let's do SLP. Okay. All right, first up, daily chart. We don't have enough history. 4-hour chart. So essentially what's happening here is whenever you get this sort of falling wedge pattern, which I am actually drawing, yeah, very clean, very simple. So typically what happens with these is people see the breakout of the falling wedge and then say, oh, breakout, I should buy. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's turn that off so I can see a bit better. Yeah, let's actually draw that accurately. Okay, there we go. So if people see this falling wedge and I see the initial impulse out, and you see quite a lot of volume on this impulse, and you don't actually see start a trend, and that's because we still have all this exhaustion we need to cool off. So typically after these falling wedge patterns, you usually get the initial impulse and then it immediately dies and just trickles. Now, whether or not trend begins after that is usually going to be decided on our wave PM. And so once we actually get sufficient compression like we did over here, whichever way our CCI weighted it, in this case, it was positively, it will result in an upward move, usually out of these areas. And from what I can see, it was a solid 45%, very volatile. Very clean. Just now we're actually seeing mean reversion on a lower time frame from that, where we have ourselves the initial impulse, which will generate a mean reversion pivot, which will compress, and now we're actually seeing a bearish impulse in reverse. So this should, in fact, give us a bullish MR pivot to work with here, though I would not be thinking about bullish plays right now, since it's very likely we're going to be mirroring equities right now, and equities are not performing well. And Cat has released his third doom and gloom report as of this week, which I have learned to respect. So you should too. Definitely recommend reading it. Go ahead and join our Trading General channel and drop it in there. Okay. Next up, we're going to take a look at Alice. This is a pretty clean chart. So little lesson here for you pixel hexes. This mean reversion condition is just so ridiculously clean. Like, look at this. Like, this pivot is insanely well respected. And as soon as we actually see our impulse inside, we immediately tank for the mean and we get our round of compression. So what's nice about this is if you look at the wave PM during this compression, we actually do end up fully compressed. And you'll notice when we finally do get that wave PM cross, it is bearishly weighted. So we got two things here. We have our CLCP. And once we blast past that 3.2 CLCP, in addition to having our wave PM cross, it results in a very clean and defined downward trend. So bearish chart. All right, let's do Bitcoin. Wow. Now, I really did not expect Bitcoin to be seeing a leg up today with how red everything has been looking. But usually we see this much red because Bitcoin is doing volatility, right? So generally, if Bitcoin is getting wild and you're in an altcoin, people will exit the altcoin to get into the wild volatility because the reason they're in an altcoin is for the volatility. So if Bitcoin itself is volatile and they are on an altcoin, think about it like a double pendulum. If you have Bitcoin here on a pendulum, right, and suddenly it gets volatile, it starts shaking, like you have some predictability on how the pendulum is going to swing. Sure, you're on a train and the pendulum is wishy-washy, all crazy, but you still have some definition. So the price of altcoins is defined on the price of Bitcoin. So if you have the price of Bitcoin here, right, and it has its volatility and the price is swinging back and forth, well, altcoins, their price is derived off of Bitcoin. So essentially what you're doing is you're setting up a double pendulum of volatility. Your altcoin now has its own volatility reacting off of Bitcoin's volatility. So you get a double pendulum, which I'm sure you've all seen, where you just get these wild, unpredictable spiraling circles, which is very hard to deal with. So that is why people exit altcoins when Bitcoin is seeing high volatility, because it is hard to control. It is harder to control your position if you are attempting to fight off that extra step of chaos, if you will. I digress. 4-hour chart. Do we have ourselves a trend pivot? We do, and it's nicely defined. So actually, it's not nicely defined. So what we have here is a cloud, and clouded pivots I find extremely unreliable for actually defining price action. What we can do is we can go to lower time frame, and we can just separate it into separate impulses. So see, this is what I want to see. This is its own impulse, which has its own mean reversion pivot. which times out here, where the LOXP, oh, this one actually didn't time out. We actually just saw immediately re-expanded. Huh, interesting. So this expansion times out over here, in which case we enable ourselves resumption of trend, which we can define off of this 14 period crossing up, which results in our nice little new bump here, which has its own mean inversion pivot on the lower time frame. And we can actually check if that's mean inverting now. It is. So Bitcoin has had its newest impulse, but it has failed, and we are going to see trending mean inversion probably down to around, what is it? 200 moving average on the 15-minute chart. So right now, 56,000. But that's a very short-term analysis. Essentially, we've just been getting these repeated impulses. Many people will call them flags, where we have expansion followed by compression, expansion followed by compression. And essentially, it's the way to sustainably trend without becoming overexpanded. So very healthy price action for sustainable trend on the lower time frames. 1 hour chart. Yeah, just this newest impulse is failing. We've bounced off with the CLCP here. I think we might actually see a little bit more compression here before we see our next leg up. All right, folks, been a pleasure. I